Hey, welcome to the Birth Boss podcast. I'm your host, Jodi Congdon, and my special guest today is the owner of the Boston Doula Circle agency, Ananda Lowe. Ananda, welcome.
Thank
Um,
you, Jody.
and we're gonna focus today. We talk a lot on this podcast about growing a business and what it looks like when it gets to a point that you are busy enough for yourself and thinking about ways to grow and scale. And our focus today is going to be moving to an agency model, but instead of starting from scratch, finding someone who has an established agency that they're looking to sell and buying it. So you're going straight to the goods instead of figuring out a way to start, kind of from scratch. And I love that. I love that. Work smart, work smart, not hard. So I will let you, give a proper introduction to yourself and then we will get right into it. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great. Thank you, Jody. Yes, I'm happy to share my story. I think that anyone who starts an agency or buys an agency is each person's probably going to have a little bit of a unique path of their own. So I look forward to telling you what my path is. I started my own agency about 15 years ago that was only in business for about 1 year. I went back to solo practice, and then more recently, 3 years ago, I bought an agency and continue to be the owner and director.
I love it. I love it. So you were involved in the agency as a contractor prior to stepping into more of an admin role and more of a leadership role, and then ultimately ended up taking the whole thing over.
That's correct.
I love it. I
Yes,
love
I
it.
was a contractor, and I was offering additional skills and services
And
to the business, particularly probably in the area of marketing. That's something that I've uh, done for years and have find to be a fun aspect of um of of running a business, and so that's what I was offering in
I
addition
love
to
it.
my
And a lot of
doula
times,
contractor.
contractors that are doing doula work have other skills and other things that they're good at and could be an asset to the owner in helping them not only, with clients, but in an admin role or, on back end stuff. And, as an owner myself, I like nothing more than the people that work with you, that are part of your, your kind of team of doulas stepping in because there's already a trust there. And that, you know, they're doing it because they're good at it, they care about your business growing, but it directly benefits them in the way that the more your agency grows and the more clients that come in and the better reputation they have ultimately will keep them busy for longer. So they sort of have a stake in it as well. And I mean, again, for that reason, but I love keeping the same people in my tight circle, because they know the things. And, you can have such an organized system in your business, but there's still a period of bringing on someone new and just showing them the ropes. And, you know, it takes a long time to teach someone your voice, right? And your personality. Like a lot of times, I'll see doulas hiring social media managers and people to write the content for their website or whatever. And sometimes it feels so different than from what would come out of their mouth or the ideas that they have. All of a sudden, there's a shift, and then you're like, wait a minute, that feels sort of like not as authentic, like as it was prior. So it's hard. There's a big learning curve and a big kind of time in there where you're showing someone, so you're kind of doing double the work.
Yeah, it does make sense to me that if a doula is working for an agency at some time, that's where they're going to gain experience with how an
Mhm.
agency is run. So they'll have the option, again, to put themselves forward and offer to help in an administrative capacity. And there's a few folks on my team who've let it be known that they're available for that. So I'm guessing that's true in other agencies as well. Like you said,
Mhm.
there's so many skills already on the team.
Yeah.
Um, and so my first go round, which was the agency from 15 years ago, there were fewer agencies at that time, a
Mhm.
lot fewer agencies. It might have been a little longer than 15 years ago. Um, there were very, very few. We kind of knew who they you would count them on their hand in terms of who was running an agency around the country,
Mhm.
not who was running an agency in your area. Now
Right.
we've got
Right.
more agencies. So back then there wasn't as much opportunity to to learn from agencies that were already established in your area. But now we folks do have the opportunity to work in an agency, and it's that's a legitimate way to
Yeah.
see if that's something you would want to do. I also think it gives the doula or the contractor a way to it gives them a couple of options, because one is to think about going into agency ownership.
Mhm.
The other one is to think about going into being an administrator
Yeah.
for someone else's agency, and that could be the end goal.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
person could say, you know what, I want to help be the I want to be the, co-director
yeah.
of this business, but not the owner, and have a guaranteed steady salary,
Yep.
but without the liabilities of being the actual owner.
Mhm.
And that's a totally viable option and alternative to business to agency ownership. I think is agency administration.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I can remember back when I started my agency, and it wasn't even like, oh, I really want to be an agency owner. A couple of events happened in my life where I just was not in a space to continue to take private clients. And at that point, I was well, established and just overwhelmed with clients. And my father was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and I really needed to just immediately take a step back and give away all the clients that I had coming up. And I was also newly engaged and planning a wedding, which everything happened in this 4 or 5 month period. I wanted to spend every minute I could with my dad, and he wanted to plan my wedding, so I said, take the reins, do whatever you want to do. I got married in March of 2015, and he passed away in May. So I'm really glad that I had like that intensive time with him. But it really just it changed the trajectory of my business tremendously. And I ended up getting pregnant with my second and third daughters, like, that year and the year after. And because I'm a postpartum doula trainer, I had, a pool of people that I could say, okay, I would love for you to take this client. And this client inquired, and so I started kind of piecing it all together. And I was like, this has taken on a life of its own. It's become a business. But it did take me probably 2 or 3 years to like perfect it. A lot of trial and error, a lot of trying different systems and getting organized. And, what is my dialogue with clients going to sound like now? And just getting a lawyer and getting an accountant and getting a bookkeeper and all of the things that I just didn't have as big of a need for before. So it took quite a bit of time, but it was worth it. I learned so much that I probably would never have learned had I stepped into the role in an established, so there's I think pros and cons of both sides. But I definitely I don't know. I feel like it was a blessing in disguise that it happened the way that it did, because it has since parlayed into one of my biggest offers, to doulas is, how to move from a solo practice to an agency model. And I never would have had that knowledge and built that program had it not been for like the 3 years that I spent doing it and learning a lot of not what not to do. It's almost more important to learn that stuff and to know what doesn't work than to figure out what works. And I think it's beneficial.
Jody, I'm going to give you a blue ribbon because you said that it took about 2 to 3 years to
Yep.
figure out your own systems. And that sounds like a nice, efficient number of years. I'm at year 3, and I could see this continuing for a while because there is a big learning curve.
Really
It's a
big,
big
really
learning curve.
big.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too because your brand was your brand before, and it was your personality and your voice, and all of those things that were representative of you, and you want to keep that. You don't want to lose that, but you also now have to open it up to like so many other personalities that you work with, and just other strengths and other services and offers, and you don't want to lose your face in it all, but you also want people to know that it is much bigger and essentially much better than just you know the little thing you had going on before. So it's a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of dialogue, and I think it's a lot of organization as well. Um, a huge piece of this is organization. When you're working with one or two clients and you can have the time to email back and forth, and then all of a sudden you have 40 on your plate, and you're just like, okay, there's no reason and no time for this. So it's like, how do you expedite that? How do you streamline that without losing that personal touch? Like, we're not selling, silverware. We're selling a service that is so personal and so special that it needs that that trust and that deep level of connection, but we also can't be having these conversations with every client.
Yeah, and I'd say in my case, currently, I took over the business. I bought the business 3 years ago, and in that 3 years, I have made use of members of my team to help with administrative
Mhm.
tasks. And one of those team members stood out as a particularly ambitious person and has basically over the course of the last 3 years become my second in command.
Mhm.
And that person may be in some ways I was going to say the face of the business, but I'm going to say the voice of the
Mhm.
business more so. I think I might be the visual face of the business, and my associate, in some ways, we could possibly call her the voice of the business
Mhm.
because she does have more voice contact. She does have more of the phone calls now than I do, and that's working for us. So that's how the division of labor is kind of shaking out um, for us. And at other, I know there are other agencies who also have like a second in command or an administrative, you
Mhm.
know, director who reports to the owner. So that's the structure some of us are using, and some of us are using the structure where the owner continues to be the voice and does not necessarily turn that over to an
Mhm.
administrative helper.
Now, are you still taking private clients?
Myself,
Yep.
no, not really. Last year I was taking lactation clients,
Mhm.
um, and this year, that's actually an area of our business that's quite slow. We haven't marketed it. I feel
Mhm.
like the need for lactation help is so vast
Mhm.
and so deep, but people need to know how to find it. So that's probably what I would do. That's my favorite form of direct service is lactation, but we haven't put the time into building that dimension
Mhm.
of our business. So it's birth doula and postpartum services, which I'm not doing. I'm not working privately unless there's a need for emergency backup.
So when you bought this agency, did you kind of just slide in and continue running it the way they were running it, or did you come in, clean up shop a bit and really kind of make it your own? And I know that's not like an overnight thing. That is absolutely a slow transition. Um, but yeah, if you could kind of speak to that a bit, and in this is like a very simple way of putting it, but like, how easy was it to step into this, and then just because you can't be like, we're shutting down for like 3 months, we're gonna revamp and then we're gonna open. You have to just slide in, and you're still going. Your clients from that booked 6 months ago, and then it's this ever like, it never stops. It never stops. It's not like a clean start and
Mhm.
stop.
Mhm. I would say that just about all of the above, everything that you just mentioned happened.
Mhm.
So I did continue to use systems that were working well. I had already been on the team for, I think, 4 years. So I was familiar with all of the systems, and I had helped, to bring some of the systems about. Um, and then there were areas where systems um, needed to continue evolving, pivoting,
Hmm.
being fine-tuned, and so that's what I did in those cases as well. And even something as simple as, I'll say, our website. I the website, the look of our website started to shift a bit to
Hmm.
have more of my touch added to it. And something that's interesting is that right now, um, I'm working with a new website designer. So we're going to completely overhaul everything.
Yep, yep.
Um, Totally, for the first time in like the 8 or 9 years that the agency's been in existence. But again, that's like a visual representation. But it's also a website is also a sales funnel.
Hmm.
So I'm working with our website designer in making our website more of a sales vehicle,
Yep, absolutely.
basically. But the visual look of it is going to change completely because I'm working with a designer who has a lot to offer in terms of
Mhm.
visual creativity. So that'll
Yep.
be fun too. It's like, oh gosh, we have a whole new look. That's going to be
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, and you
Um,
want it to be representative of you as the owner and your vision for it, but also a reflection of just your personality and um that's always a ton of fun to be like, what exactly is my personality? Like what exactly am I trying to, put out there? Like what do I want people to see when they look at this? How do I want them to feel? And that's really important. That's actually a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
yeah, I'm kind of surprised that rehauling a website is a part-time job in itself. It's going to take three
Oh,
or
for
four
sure.
months.
Yes.
And both the designer and me are just working on it every single day, and it's I didn't realize it was going to be a whole job position in itself.
Now, when you took over, was there a period of time where the previous owner stayed on and you did it together, or it was like hi and bye, and now you're kind of doing this?
It was a little more like the latter, where we had a date
Hmm.
where she retired, I became the director, and we were now two separate um, entities.
And was there
But
a
it's something.
period too where people were like, "Oh, okay, I anticipated speaking with someone else, and but who are you?"
Um, I think that we were letting clients know who were already with us. They definitely needed to know that there was going to be a change. And I think the period of time where we had that, where both of us were having input, it was before the the specific changeover to me becoming the new owner.
Hmm.
So there was a period where I often think of it as we might have taken a little bit too long to complete the sale of the business. I think
Hmm.
it took us almost a year. And I think that's because, looking back on it, I had never bought a business before,
Hmm.
had never sold a business before. And, there was a lawyer involved. And myself and the seller of the business, we kind of kept asking some of the same questions repeatedly,
Hmm.
just so that we could get it. Like we weren't we weren't experienced with it, so it probably could have been done in a few months.
Yep.
I'm thinking like it probably could have been done in maybe 3 months, but it took us almost a year, and that's okay. And during that year, we were not only negotiating the sale and writing up a contract to
Hmm.
sell the business with an attorney, but we were also getting ready for the transition in
Yep.
in other ways as well. So that did happen, but once I became the owner, we were done.
Yep. And was it easy as far as like just the logistics of switching the bank accounts and like things are in your name now? And I just know how involved, it is with my agency, just how many parts there are. Like I think about if someone else were to take over, like everything is so attached to me and my life, that it would not be simple.
Yeah, so we did what was called an asset sale,
Mhm.
where I bought certain assets of the business, but I did not buy the entire I didn't buy all of the liabilities of the business.
Mhm.
So that term is a little bit confusing and almost makes me want to Google it, but I believe I'm using it correctly that an asset sale is where you buy a few assets, but you don't
Mhm.
buy all of them. So I
Okay.
bought the name, I bought the business, I bought the website, I bought the client list.
Mhm.
Um, but I did not buy the bank. Did not buy the bank accounts. I started over with new bank accounts. So that was
Gotcha.
easy.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Easy, easy. Is the name trademarked?
The name is not trademarked, but I would like it to be soon.
Okay, okay. I just had my trademark lawyer. I have a membership community for doulas. It is solely focused on the business part of what we do. And my trademark lawyer was just on talking about protection and protecting your assets. And one of the things, that I love that she says, because my business name is trademarked, it's a very valuable asset to your business. It is something that stays forever, no matter if you sell it to someone else. Nobody can take that. So, you know, two very popular words, Boston and doula, could be taken and used in so many different ways. So definitely something to think about. And happy to share her information. She's amazing. But
Yes, please. I'd love that.
yes. Yeah. Lane Lyons, if you're listening to this, I sing her praises all the time because she's one of those people where, you ever have someone that does a service for you and they just come in and assume that you know all the things. Like, and then when you ask questions, they look at you like you're dumb. Like, how could you not know that about taxes? And I'm
Mhm.
like, well, that's why I hired you. But, you know, she was like so she just explained everything in a way that I understood it, and she gave all these examples, and it's like, ask all the questions. Like, I want you to talk about this and know exactly what you're talking about. And I love that. I love that. And I really do try to
That's
use
wonderful.
women business owners who specialize in women owned business. I feel like that's important to me as far as making those connections and those relationships. And she fits that so perfectly. And I
Definitely.
miss
And
her for
those vendors can be our teachers and
yes.
educators. So,
Yes.
yes, I too would want to work with an attorney. I would want to work with an accountant who educates me.
Yep.
And
Huge.
so I have had to interview a few different folks to find the
Hmm.
ones who will do that because not all of them approach it in the same way. So that's a great opportunity for a
Yep.
business owner or a would-be business owner.
Yeah.
Go out and interview at least two of
Yep.
every kind of professional that
Hmm.
you're going to need
Yeah.
to help you out, and you're going to see different styles. And if you want to be over informed, just like a doula client might say to
Yep.
their doctor, I'm somebody who wants to be over informed, tell me everything. That's how I feel in my business. So that's the kind of person I want to
Yeah.
hire as
And
well.
I feel like one of the things that I love to do is to do the legwork for people and, sort of have this small but mighty list of people that I use, services that I use for my business. Cause we all need an accountant and a bookkeeper and a lawyer, for trademarks, or a lawyer for contract. I mean, we all need the similar things. So I love to sort of do that legwork and have that list for people, and really be clear about why I love them and why I chose them. And it makes me think of years ago when I was choosing a pediatrician for my oldest. One of my good friends was like, "Oh, I interviewed this pediatrician. I would never use her, but I know that she's someone that you would love." And, my friend was someone who loves to get a prescription written and doesn't want to do any research. She loves to listen to the doctor and do all the things. And she knew I was someone who, doesn't want a prescription. What supplements can we take? Like, what foods can we eat? And I was really very particular about just schedules of things. And so while she was like, I would never, ever use this pediatrician, I think she'd be perfect for you. We're 17 years into this pediatrician, 3 kids. So it's interesting. She did the legwork, but just knew me and knew that it would be the opposite of what, she would want. But I think that, I really do try to get to know people and know their business so I can talk about them and accurately represent them and refer them to, other business owners so they can, utilize them and not have to worry about it. It's kind of like, what you do as the agency owner. You're doing all the
Mhm.
legwork. You know all the doulas, their personalities, their strengths, their trainings, all the things. And when you get a feel for what the client is looking for, like, priorities for the client, you can make that perfect match. So I feel like I do that for like outside services too.
That's fantastic. And that makes me think of something, Jody, too. Um, if someone's out there listening who would like to become an agency owner,
Hmm.
um, and is, might consider buying an agency, I think my advice would be, that's another kind of networking, right?
Hmm.
You're starting to you want to find out, well, which are the agencies that might sell their business.
Hmm.
And so for that, and I don't think I've actually gotten that specific inquiry. I'm more
Hmm.
likely to get inquiries from people saying, I'm a brand new doula. Can I take you out to coffee to just talk about being a doula?
Yep.
That there's still lots and lots of those types of requests, which I
Hmm.
can't really do. I can't go out. I don't drink coffee. And I can't go out to coffee with every new doula.
Yeah.
But there's other ways that I can support them. I can say,
Hmm.
join our Facebook group
Hmm.
for Massachusetts doulas. You'll be blown away by the amount of information on there,
Hmm.
and there's other things they can do. But anyway, going back to kind of networking with the goal of possibly buying an agency
Hmm.
or learning about buying an agency, I think what I would suggest to folks would be to maybe, this is my opinion. I don't know what you think of this, Jody. I would
Yeah.
suggest maybe getting to, if it's your very first meeting with an agency owner, I don't think I would bring up, I want to buy your agency or I want to buy an agency. I think I would say, like, we need to become friends, and or
Yeah.
at least get to know each other. And yes, maybe someday I'd like to own an agency or buy an agency, but I wouldn't make that direct ask, like, are you
Hmm.
selling
Yeah.
yours? I
Yeah.
think I would do it, and I would take at least one step in between, um, meeting someone from the very first time and asking if their business is for sale. At least
Yeah.
get to know them, establish some kind of relationship first. And
Yeah.
then also, you know, if again, if somebody was reaching out for that kind of networking, how can they be helpful? How can we be helpful to each other?
Yeah.
So again, if someone says, "Can I buy you coffee?" and I don't drink coffee, they're not really offering something that I have time in my busy
Yeah.
schedule
Yeah.
to do, because there's not, I'm not going to gain anything from it. And it's not that I'm looking to gain
No, but your
gain
time
things
is
for the sake of
valuable.
gaining it,
Your
but my
time is
time is valuable.
valuable.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
For sure. And I think that's one of the things that there's two parts to what I'm going to say. One of the things I think, newer doulas don't realize is that our time is valuable. And, you know, how do I say this nicely? You don't owe anybody anything. Can I take a look at your contract? No, I paid a lawyer $2,000 for that. Like, no, you cannot take a look at it. No, you can't have it. You can spend 15 minutes with me and I can, talk about the important points that you would want to have in your contract. But I think, the doulas coming into this, some of them feel like they can just slide on in, ask for a high, price point, hourly rate. They're bent out of shape when they don't get it. They want access to all of your stuff. No, like there's a time and a place for that. And if it's going out for coffee, I love coffee. I'm happy to sit with someone that feels like valuable. And I don't necessarily need to do that for anything in return. Like, I love to educate, but you don't have time all day every day to be fielding these questions and answering these questions. And so in terms of like how you can still be super helpful to someone, I've had these free workshops where I talk about important parts of a contract. Like, that is my contribution to you. um I have, a membership, a community membership, and it's a paid membership, but you will get everything you need out of that membership in terms of building a successful business that is easily scalable, that at some point you will leave a legacy and you can sell it or you can pass it on. I mean, so I have created these things for the newer doula community. And I love the people who appreciate the building of these courses and workshops for them. Um, so it is hard because when I first started, I was always looking for someone to answer my questions. And when I wanted, or when I ultimately started an agency, and there wasn't, like you said, there just wasn't any agency owners out there. um I just did it myself. Like, I was ambitious, and I knew that it was something that I wanted, and I figured it out. So it's, you try to give back as much as you can whenever you can, but I think that you also have to say, my time is valuable, and I have these other responsibilities, and you have to sort of prioritize those things. And there's just not enough hours in the day. There is not enough time in the day to do all the things, from people who are just getting going to people who are, you know, making well over six figures and want to take that seven-figure step. And you have to kind of pick your side there. um I don't know,
Yeah.
but yeah,
And
it is hard.
someone in a different industry once said to me when I was kind of dabbling in something else, they said, you have to earn
Hmm.
your place in our community, and you need to participate. This was actually regarding salsa dancing. So I used to host salsa dancing events, and I was thinking about becoming an event producer. And someone said to me, well, we earned our place by and then they gave some examples,
Hmm.
joining the performance team
Yep.
of a particular dance studio, not just approaching the studio and saying, "What can you do for me?" But we
Hmm.
actually we earned it by putting in our, sweat equity. And that was wonderful advice. And I probably this was right before the pandemic. Actually, I was doing a lot of dancing, and then I stopped completely with the pandemic. But it was, I needed to be reminded,
Yep.
or even I have it explained to me, like, it needs to be earned, and this is how you do it in this industry. These are some examples of what you can do. So same thing, to have that mindset, for all of us to be reminded and to remember that we need to earn our place in the
But I
community.
think you're better for it. Like, one of my
Yeah.
my current pet peeves is that, you know now that insurance is covering doula care and we have Carrot, everyone wants to take a $99 doula course where you're certified tomorrow, so we can hurry up and take all the insurance and take the Carrot benefits and all that. Like,
Mhm.
that's great, and I appreciate the hustle, but like, that doesn't do you any good for the longevity of your career. Like, you're not
Mhm.
stepping in and learning, and you're not stepping in and doing your due diligence and doing the work. And it's like, I'm better off for the struggling to figure out how to run an agency now than if someone said, $99, do it tomorrow, and pop up and show up, and I probably would run it into the ground. So it's like, there's a process to everything, and it's time and it's hard work, and sometimes it's a financial investment, but you are better off for taking like the long road. Is it, what is it, there's a African proverb, that if we want to go fast, go alone, but if we want to do it right, go with your group. It's not, that's not it, but that's the gist of it. Like, if you want to hustle and get there, like, you're probably going to be at the finish line by yourself. But like, if you're utilizing your community, right, and we're going at a slower pace, you're going to, like, quote unquote, win the race in the long run. I butchered that for sure, but you get the gist. Um,
No,
and it's
I think
true.
the question of longevity is an important one, and I think you and I have probably even communicated about this, online.
Yep.
We haven't talked about it face to face, but that's, I even think back. I think enough time has passed that I can name a name here, but you and I remember the business that was called ISIS Parenting,
Yep. Yep.
you know, which was a wonderful company in a lot of ways, but they also shut down with no notice
Yep.
after being in business for a few years, and that was
I
devastating.
remember parents were
It was
devastated.
it was
Devastated.
devastating to our community. And so I think that, and I don't know if it's an exact parallel, but it's just it is an example,
Yeah.
of what can happen. And yes, agencies are going to open, doula
Mhm.
agencies are also going to close or not last. And we're kind of, there is such a there's kind of a little bit of a gold rush maybe happening right now with folks
Yeah.
opening agencies, and we'll need to see over the course of the next few years who is planning properly for that longevity, and I don't think everybody is.
Right. And I think too, even with, doulas, we need you. Like there are more client inquiries than there are people to fill, those needs. So it's like, especially with insurance coverage and carrot and just the community education piece. We have more OBs and midwives and therapists and pelvic floor therapists and chiropractors referring to us, so it's like this wasn't the case 10 years ago. We were like fighting to be like, here's our title, here's what we do. And now it's like people are just saying, oh, when you give birth, like you definitely should have some postpartum support. And here's what it looks like. Like we're not even begging for them to talk about us. Like they're just talking about us. And that I think will only grow. The need for doulas and the desire for doulas will only grow. So it's like we need all the doulas who are, jumping on the train here to do it properly and stay for a long time to care for all these clients and make a career out of it and not get burned out and do it the right way and balance their business and diversify their offers so they're not working 60, 70, 80 hours for the desired paycheck, but it's all, hands on with clients. And there's a gap in there somewhere. It's not a do it quick, and it's not like you need to go slow and you need to learn the right way.
And what that makes me think, Jody, I wonder if we're even going to see the final outcome like in our lifetimes.
I hope
I've
so.
now been doing this for 29 years, and so it's amazing to see what has changed and how nobody knew the word doula when I
Mhm.
started out.
Yeah.
Um, but on the other hand, there's still a lot to be done, so it's going to be interesting to see where we get. Maybe I'll be retired in 10 years, or
Yeah.
15 years. I
Yeah.
probably
Yep.
will.
Yep.
And what will it look like in my lifetime? And Penny Simkin passed away last year, and she was in this field for 50 years,
Yep.
and you see all kinds of changes. But at some point along the game, we do have to stop and reflect and say, what is the long term
Yeah.
goal?
Like what's
And it,
working, what's not working, what can we adjust as clients' needs adjust, you know?
yeah,
And that is
yeah.
happening. That is definitely happening. I'm seeing a very different type of clientele, now than 5 or 10 years ago. Maternal mental health is not being taken care of the way it should be. And I think post pandemic, things took a terrible turn and they're not going in the right direction now. We see more depression and anxiety now with clients. And
Mm, yeah.
it's a little more difficult. It's a little more difficult now. And I think in terms of the difficulty being on the doula end, the energy that it is taking out of us. Um, and so I think there needs to be, a shift in the education and the training. Expectations sometimes are unrealistic. Like, yes, we're caring for, parents and babies, and it is a lot of fun and we do love them, but there's much more to it. And so there's an unrealistic expectation that just because you love, parents and babies, that this is the career for you. And maybe it will be, or maybe it is, maybe it's not. But yeah, it's a deep, there's a deep richness to it. And a
Yeah,
different understanding of what clients needs than just like, I
I
love
think,
taking care of parents and babies.
yeah, and I think those of us who have been doing this for 15 or 20 or more years probably would really like to ask the newest generation, learn your history,
Yep.
learn what it took for us to get here, learn about what we had to fight
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
um, to get here. It didn't just arrive in a flash
Right. Right.
in 2025 or 24. Like
Yeah.
there was a lot of events leading up to this. So when people do, when the younger generation gets to know the older generation,
Yeah.
ask us, what was it like when you
It was
started?
a
It wasn't
it
that
was
long
a
ago.
struggle for respect. It was a struggle for respect. There was quite a disrespect for like, oh, you're just a doula. Like you're just a doula. And now it's like, oh, you're a doula. Like that's amazing. So and I think it'll only get, the respect will only grow. But it really does take our part to, really put it out there why there needs to be that respect, just how much we're doing
Mhm.
for the perinatal community. But the numbers, the trajectory needs to be different as far as, outcomes, and we'll get there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like
And
my kids. They're
this is
like,
what we wanted this when I was starting out almost 30 years ago. We
yeah,
wanted to be known.
yeah,
But again, we haven't arrived at the final destination either, and there's more to do, and that's because of the history of um, how families became isolated
yeah,
in in the last several generations in our society, and how midwife care was actually outlawed in
yeah, yeah.
uh, many parts of the country. And so we're not midwives, but we're related to that
Right,
field
right,
of
right.
women taking care of women.
Mhm.
Um and we weren't wanted, and we were even outlawed
Yep,
at various points. So I think really understanding that history is important to know how we got where we are today, and
yeah,
how we're going to get where we're going next, is to
right.
really understand where this all came from.
Right. And I think there was such an ignorance of the importance of midwifery, and, as a result, doula care, just how important that role is. And yeah, it's like, my kids can't even fathom that there was no Netflix like when I was younger. And I'm like, there was a time where I went to my grandparents' house and they didn't have a remote for the TV. Like you had to get up. Like, can you even imagine like what that would be like for you?
Mhm.
And they're just like, "Hey, Alexa, like turn," and then I'm like, they feel bad. They feel so terrible for me, but I'm like, that's all you knew. And I probably was better off for getting up. It's like, it's just interesting. But yeah, when you explain like those things, it's like, oh, okay, it makes more sense now. And they appreciate more because, they understand that it wasn't always like a boom, you get what you want. But it will come around and bite them that everything is so accessible now. You lose something, with all that accessibility.
Mhm.
Yes. So damn Netflix. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
But anyway, this was like very enlightening. I'm always interested in like, the buying and selling of businesses and doula, businesses and agencies. And I always love to see it, in the doula agency group. People are always asking questions about buying and selling and what does it look like and who wants to buy this and who wants to sell this. And um it is very cool because you start off and you're like, I'm just going to start this little business, and then all of a sudden you take a look at the valuation of what you created from this tiny seed and you're like, oh wow, like wow, this is worth something. And it's pretty incredible. It's incredible just what we're building here, for the community, but for ourselves and our family. Like I don't ever lose sight of the fact that I've built a business that allows me to be home for my kids at any given time and be flexible, and save for retirement and invest and do the things, and never have to say no to the client inquiries, and be able to give doulas a full-time paycheck that they may not have had before just because they're getting out there and they don't have that clientele, and I did. So I think it's
Mhm.
just we lose sight of how beneficial this all is for everybody that it touches.
Yeah, and what you just mentioned about, knowing the valuation of your business, makes me think that I really want folks who are thinking about agency ownership, or who have started their agencies and are in the
Yeah.
early years, really, really please make use of your accountant,
Yes, keep
and
your books clean.
keep your books clean, make sure that um, things are correct. Um, and Also, use your accountant, as your source of education. So if your
Yeah.
accountant, find out if your accountant does consulting for small businesses. And if you haven't already had a
Mhm.
couple of sit downs with your accountant where you spend, an hour or two just dedicated to talking about your business with your accountant, your
Yep.
projections, your financial projections for your agency, what your agency is going to be worth in a few years. Like,
Yes.
do that.
That's important.
Really don't go blindly and just say, okay, I'll send my accountant my numbers at tax time.
Yep.
That is not
You
what
should
an
know.
accountant
You should
is
know what
is
you're
only
worth
for.
at all times. And I think too, and then I'll wrap this up, but one of the things that I always tell people is you should always have this, bucket for emergencies. Like, what does it cost to run your business for 3 months? Stick it in an account and don't ever touch it. And if you need it, pull from it. But, you should always know what the business is worth and what your numbers are, because there could come a time where you didn't expect the need to sell or the need to figure stuff out, and you want to be
Mhm.
accurate with the representation of your business in terms of the financials. There's nothing worse when you're like, ooh, I have no idea. That's a good question. You should know. And I think it also helps too when you treat your business with that kind of respect. You become a different kind of business owner. Like, you're more serious about it, and it shows in the way, you are the CEO of your business. You are the VIP, the MVP, all the things. Um but people say like, "Oh, I own a small business," or like, "I'm just an agency owner, I'm just a doula." Like, no, you are the CEO of your growing fabulous business. So I feel like when we say those things, and we know those numbers, we act accordingly. And it's important. It's important.
It is. You don't need necessarily to have a huge team of advisors, but you have to have
Right.
an accountant. You
Yes.
have to have an attorney, and you have to have at least those two professionals
And a bookkeeper.
giving
And a
you
bookkeeper.
giving and a bookkeeper giving you all the guidance that you can possibly ask
Yep.
for. You
Yep.
have to.
100%. I am so thankful that you were here talking about this. I appreciate you. I will make sure that people know how to reach out if they have any questions. I will put all of Ananda's information in the show notes. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day and keep being bosses.